Hello, YouTubers. Welcome to Level-Headed News, and I'm your host, Brenda. Third out of a whole series of news articles that I'm going to be bringing you today, episodes anyway. This particular episode has 4 articles in it, and it has to do with Standing Rock, Dapple, Leonard Peltier, and prepping. So we'll go ahead and jump on into them. The first one is off of TheVerge.com, and it says police barricades still stand between Dapple protesters and emergency services. And here's how it reads. On December the 4th, U.S. Army ruled that Dakota Access Pipeline planned to run underneath the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe's water source would not be allowed to cross the Missouri River. In the wake of the decision, community leaders and authorities encouraged protesters, who would prefer to be called water protectors, to claim their victory and disband. Yet many still remain, camping on the river's edge, worried that the pipeline operator might ignore the order to halt construction. They point to a concrete and razor wire barricade that has become a focal point for the community here as a sign that their fight is not yet won. The barricade stands on the backwater bridge between the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation and Bismarck, the capital of North Dakota, and the closest big city. Massive concrete blocks typically used to wall off lanes of traffic span the bridge's northern end, linked with razor wire and lit by floodlights. More blocks run lengthwise down the snow-covered bridge, askew where a white car plowed into them. The car is still there. The County Sheriff's Department erected the barricade at the end of October, ostensibly because the backwater bridge had been damaged by fires during protests against the pipeline. The roadblock is now nearly 2 months old, and it continues to choke travel in and out of the reservation and protest camps. The state has started taking steps to remove it, but it could be at least another month before the barricade is taken down. That means another month of delays and detours on the snow-slicked roads as people travel from the camps to get supplies or reach hospitals. At the end of November, the former governor of North Dakota, Jack Dalrymple, called for a mandatory evacuation of the camps. That's why the roadblock is such a problem, because part of that evacuation order also restricted state agencies from providing emergency services to those remaining in the camps for the winter. The order still stands under North Dakota's new governor, Doug Burgum, who took office on December the 15th, according to the governor's communication director, Mike Nowitzki. What this means is that protesters who need urgent medical care will need to leave the camps under their own power to find it, and the fastest route to care is blocked. This blockade has been a serious issue for our people, as it cuts us off from the shortest route to major hospitals and other emergency services, Standing Rock Sioux Tribal Chairman Dave Archambault II said in a statement issued on December the 14th. Standing Rock has a small Indian Health Service hospital, but it only has 12 beds. The closure has also substantially damaged our reservation economy, he added. It's not clear exactly how much time the roadblock adds to a trip to, say, a hospital in Bismarck, North Dakota. Spokespeople with the Morton County Sheriff's Department and Highway Patrol says it adds about 10 to 15-minute detour for people in the encampments. Google Maps says about 20 minutes. But Paul Freeman and water protector, who would only be identified as Chimpole Tweeney, are both currently living in the Steady Salquin camp, and they disagree. They estimate that the barricade adds another 45 minutes to an hour to the trip to Bismarck, or longer in bad weather conditions. It's pretty obvious what they're doing here, says Tweeney. They're dragging their feet here on purpose, and it goes to show you that they're protecting the oil companies. Law enforcement closed the bridge because they say it may have been structurally damaged when 2 trucks on its northern side were set on fire during protests on October the 27th. Earlier that day, police attempted to remove water protectors from private property using pepper spray as well as tasers, rubber bullets, sound cannons, according to eyewitness account in Mother Jones. They arrested 141 people and drove 5-ton military surplus trucks onto the bridge as a barricade, says Maxine Hare, a spokesperson with the Morton County Sheriff's Department. Those trucks were then set on fire, and the sheriff's department erected the current barricade. Since that barricade went up, the bridge has continued to be on the site of ongoing conflicts between water protectors and local law enforcement. In November, footage surfaced of police spraying hoses at water protectors packed onto the bridge in sub-freezing temperatures. The police reportedly fired rubber bullets and percussion grenades at the water protectors, and one protester's arm was severely injured. AIR maintains that the protester brought the barricades and its associated problems on themselves. We wouldn't have to close the bridge if protesters had not burned the vehicles and started fires on the bridge. The bridge is closed because of protesters' actions. AIR says now they probably regret that action because they have a longer trip into Bismarck-Mandan. But that's not the fault of law enforcement. However, the trucks themselves formed a roadblock even before they were burned. In fact, AIR also said, "We are trying to create a barrier between the protesters and that private property." She adds that the private property across the bridge is owned by the pipeline operator. The bridge cannot be reopened until the state's Department of Transportation deems it safe, AIR says, but it's unusual for the Department of Transportation to be called out to inspect a bridge because of a car fire, says Jamie Olson, a spokesperson with DOT. Usually the damage that we're inspecting on bridges is as a result of a truck hitting a support beam or something like that, Olson says. But she adds the bridge is unusual itself in that it's not supported by beams, so damage to the driving surface could destabilize it. So when the fires occurred on that, I guess what we were worried about was that the structural integrity of that bridge was damaged, she says. So that's why we inspect that. There was a preliminary inspection on November the 1st, but the department determined the bridge needed more testing. That testing began on Thursday, and it could take another 30 days for results about the bridge's condition to come back from an out-of-state lab, according to a news release from the governor's office. The DOT says the reason why it took so long to begin additional testing is that they were waiting for the sheriff's department to give them the go-ahead. Law enforcement indicated to us that our inspection will have to wait until they can ensure that it will be safe for those inspectors, Olson says. Tweeney disputes that there was any danger to the inspectors. No, their safety is a priority for us too, he says. We want that bridge cleared as well. He and his fellow water protectors are not troublemakers or outlaws. They're just there to protect the water. Cold weather also prevented the inspection from going forward until now. Adds it had been too cold to run the water-cooled drills needed to take core samples from the bridge, he says. And now that the weather has warmed up somewhat, that inspection was able to take place. Nowatzki says it could take up to 30 days to receive the results. Former Governor Dalrymple, who recently left office, and the chairman of the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe met on December the 12th. They agreed that reopening the bridge will be an important step towards repairing the relationship between the two governments. At a second meeting between Archambault and Governor Burgum on December the 19th, the two leaders reaffirmed that commitment. And there is some video in that one if you want to pull it up and take a look at it. Of course, all these URLs are in the description of the video for your convenience. The next article I have is off of democracynow.org, and it says, Chair of Standing Rock Sioux calls on Obama to free Leonard Peltier. There's a name we haven't heard for a while. It says, David Archambault, the chairman of the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe, has become the latest high-profile figure to urge President Obama to grant clemency for the Native American activist Leonard Peltier, who has been imprisoned for 40 years. You have appreciated more than any other president in recent memory the tumultuous history of Native Americans and the tragic event derived from that history, Archambault wrote to Obama. Leonard Peltier is a former member of the American Indian Movement who was convicted of killing 2 FBI agents during a shootout on the South Dakota's Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in 1975. Leonard Peltier has long maintained his innocence. The shootout occurred 2 years after the American Indian Movement occupied the village of Wounded Knee for 71 days. The occupation of Wounded Knee is considered the beginning of what Oglala people refer to as the Reign of Terror. And there's some video in this one if you want to take a look at that. Seems that Obama is big on freeing drug pushers. He ought to be taking a look at this Leonard Peltier case. The next one we have here is off of the economic collapse. And it says, Trumpocalypse. Suddenly, liberals are the ones stockpiling food, guns, and emergency supplies. And let me see if I can blow this up a little bit bigger so that I can read it. Some of these are in fine print, it seems. Okay. It says, now that the shoe's on the other foot, many liberals all over America have suddenly become extremely interested in prepping, fearing that the Trump presidency could rapidly evolve into the Trumpocalypse. A significant number of leftists are now stockpiling food, guns, and emergency supplies. In fact, even though many had expected a sharp drop in gun sales following Trump's victory, what actually happened is that fear of what's coming under Trump pushed background checks for gun sales to an all-time record high on Black Friday. The election of Donald Trump has awakened the left to a degree that we haven't seen in decades, and some on the left are embracing hardcore survivalism without any apologies. What is ironic about all this is that the other end of the political spectrum, interest in prepping, is probably the lowest that's ever been in history of the modern prepper movement. A couple weeks ago, I wrote an article about how it was like a nuclear bomb went off in the prepping community, and nothing has changed since that time. In fact, since I originally wrote that article, we've gotten some hardcore numbers that show how dramatically optimism about the future has surged among those on the right. Just before the election, CNBC's All-America Economic Survey found that only 15% of all Republicans believed that the economy would improve over the next year. But after the election, that number skyrocketed all the way up to 74%. But among Democrats, it's a different story altogether. That same CNBC survey found that optimism about the economy on the left fell by more than half after the election. At this point, it is sitting at about 16%. It would be hard to overstate how negatively many on the left feel about Trump. We have seen many of them take to the streets to angrily protest his election, and according to the BBC, others have decided to stockpile food and guns in preparation for social and economic collapse. And there's an insert in this. It says, in America, stockpiling weapons and food preparation for social and economic collapse has tended to be the preserve of right-wing libertarians and foes of big government, but the Liberal Prepper Facebook group, up to now a small band, reports big increase in inquiries. A lot of people are worried that not only will a Trump presidency fail, but that it will fail spectacularly to the point that we are going to end up on one or more critical situations that we are just not prepared for, says Jeff 36 of one of the group's members. And the article goes on and says, so could we see social and economic collapse under Trump? Despite the wild optimism that we are seeing on the right at the moment, without a doubt that's a possibility. It is funny how a single election can change our perspective on things so dramatically. During the Obama years, it seemed like the left was constantly talking about the disarming of everyone. Now, Trump has sparked a renewed interest in gun ownership among many liberals. Prominent progressive author Anne Marie Cox is just one example. And the insert here says, witness Anne Marie Cox, a popular progressive writer with gigs at MTV and the New York Times. And there's a quote. It says, so who else has been researching basic disaster prep stuff? She polled her Twitter audience on Wednesday. Because congrats, right-wingers, I do not trust the government to help anymore. Her next tweet extended the holiday merriment to our nation's Second Amendment enthusiast. Get my rifle out of storage this week. And did you know that the leftists have even have their own gun organization? It's known as the Liberal Gun Club. And since Trump's victory, it has experienced a huge surge in membership. Laura Smith, national spokesperson for the Liberal Gun Club, says her organization has seen a huge rise in inquiries since November's election and a 10% increase in paid members. U.S. gun sales hit record levels in October amid fears a Hillary election victory would lead to draconian gun control measures. The election of Donald Trump, who was backed by the National Rifle Association early on was thought to bring an end to panic buying. Shares in gun manufacturers even dropped by as much as 18% following his victory. Instead, FBI background checks for gun transactions soared to a new record for a single day. 185,713 during Black Friday sales on November the 25th, according to gun control news site The Trace. Many on the right have responded to Donald Trump's election victory by deciding that the battle is over and that it's time to go to sleep. But many on the left have been suddenly awakened and are now prepping for extremely challenging times ahead. I hate to say this, but in this case, those on the left that are busily preparing are showing much more wisdom than many on the right that have chosen to abandon prepping altogether at this point. Of course, most of those on the left don't really understand the storm that's approaching. All they know is that Trump is really bad, and therefore they need to try to get through the next 4 years the best they can. And here's some more from the BBC. It says, we're not looking for the end of the world, Mad Max type scenarios. We're not looking at the zombie apocalypse, says the author of the left-wing survivalist blog, who also reports a surge in interest since Trump's victory. He says it's fairly easy to predict an economic collapse under Trump, but adds, no matter what, the country's still going to be here in 4 years. There's going to be another election. I'd have to agree that a major economic downturn is quite likely in the very near future. We've been on the greatest debt binge in history during the Obama years, and it's inevitable that the bubble will burst. Donald Trump basically has two choices. He could try to prolong this debt bubble for as long as possible, but that would make it even worse. Or he could try to deal with the crisis right away, but that would mean an extraordinary amount of pain for all of us. No matter who won the election, we're going to have to deal with consequences of decades of incredibly foolish decisions sooner or later. Let us certainly hope for the best, but without a doubt, those that are prepping for challenging times ahead are showing incredible wisdom, and this includes both liberals and conservatives. The next article that I have for you, the final one in this episode, is off of Natural News, and it says, if you've stopped prepping, could be the biggest mistake of your life. In a widely viral article from the economiccollapseblog.com, Michael Snyder reveals that prepping has collapsed among Trump supporters since the day of the election. Interest in prepping is probably the lowest it's ever been in the history of modern prepper movement. A couple of weeks ago, I wrote an article about how it was like a nuclear bomb went off in the prepping community, and nothing has changed since that time, Snyder wrote. Liberals and leftists, meanwhile, are suddenly stocking up like mad on food, guns, and ammo. In an article titled, Now It's the Liberals Who Are Arming Up, McClatchydC.com reports gun shop owner Michael Cargill told NBC News gun classes at his Austin, Texas store are selling out. He noticed an increase in LGBTQ African American Hispanic Muslim customers. Store owners told NBC they've seen up to 4 times as many minority customers than is typical. Liberals, it seems, are scared about the possible rise in hate crimes under a Trump presidency. What they don't realize, of course, is that nearly all the hate crimes are hate hoaxes committed by leftists. But that doesn't stop them from buying guns, which is probably a smart thing to do no matter what the fear is behind it. Preppers are being lulled into complacency by the final blow off of a wildly overvalued stock market. My warning for all preppers, no matter what your political affiliation, is that you've been lulled into a sense of complacency by the rising stock market and the Trump election victory. You could be making the biggest mistake of your life, and here's why. The Federal Reserve has already set the debt collapse apocalypse into motion by raising interest rates. The dominoes that will fall have already begun to tumble. The Fed promises 2 more interest rate hikes at least next year, giving the absurd excuse that the Obama economy is overheating from all its economic abundance and must therefore be slowed down using interest rate hikes. This is all being done to create a false narrative that Obama is handing Trump a robust economy. Rates are coupled with halting of quantitative easing and the acceleration of debt instrument failures in Europe. The result is that some moment in President Trump's first term, the global debt collapse is unleashed, unraveling the decades of debt creation and mindless bank deregulation we all witnessed under Clinton, Bush, and Obama. When that nightmare lands in Trump's lap, the most likely outcome in the streets of America will be mass riots and social chaos, a level America has never before witnessed. Remember, this is all being set into motion to blame Trump and discredit the Republican Party. I released a mini documentary explaining all this, and they have a link where you can go to read the full transcript of that. And there is also a video here that you can watch in this one that explains it. And it says what the mass riots are going to really look like. It's difficult to give you the full picture of what these riots will really look like, but I can start by explaining that food stamps will almost certainly stop working for an extended period of time. You can probably imagine what that'll mean in America's inner cities. No free food from the government. Burn it down. That's what the food stamp recipients will be shouting as the so-called chant, kill the pigs. But let me back up for a second and share something that will help you understand the financial freeze that will immediately follow the global debt collapse. There's an outstanding book by Jim Rickards called The Road to Ruin, the Global Elite Secret Plan for the Next Financial Crisis. I strongly recommend you read or listen to the book. It's available on audible.com too. As Rickards explains, the government's solution to the next big banking crisis will be to freeze institutions and transactions, much like the ice-9 molecule in Kurt Vonnegut's Cat's Cradle fiction novel. As a description in the book, ice-9 was a special kind of water molecule that was frozen solid at room temperatures. Its melting point was higher than room temperature. More importantly, ice-9 would convert all other water molecules it touched into ice-9 molecules. Thus, it could spread like a molecular pandemic, freezing ponds, streams, rivers, and eventually entire oceans. The coming debt collapse will function much like ice-9, Rickards explains, because of the global interconnectedness of central banks, investment funds, and retail banks. Once the next large collapse strikes a single institution, it will spread to all other connected institutions, freezing their transactions and assets in the same way that ice-9 would freeze rivers and lakes. The newly frozen institutions will in turn spread the financial freeze to all other institutions to which it is connected, because no bank operates in isolation these days. Everything is connected. The ice-9 financial freeze will quickly spread through the entire financial system, locking up the Western world's financial infrastructure on which everything in our society depends, including food stamps. When ATMs stop working and food stamps collapse, the ignorant, unprepared, left-wing masses go berserk. This means no one will be able to get cash out of their ATMs, food stamps won't work, credit card transactions will be halted at retail, businesses won't be able to write checks, wire money, or deposit funds. Essentially, just imagine the worst case scenario in the world of banking and finance. That's what's coming. The effects on the streets shouldn't be difficult to visualize, as the following chart from the Visual Capitalist shows. Nearly 52% of millennials have less than $1,000 in savings. This number is even worse among females, where there's nearly 57% that have less than $1,000 in savings. And you can pull this up and take a look at this chart here in this article. The article goes on and says, across the nation, numbers are similarly alarming. A 2013 article from CNN.com reported that roughly 3/4 of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck with little to no emergency savings, according to a survey released by Bankrate.com on Monday. The article explains that 22% of Americans don't even have enough cash to cover a $100 emergency expense, and 46% can't cover an $800 expense. Consider how this plays out when the ice-9 freeze kicks in across America's financial institutions. Bluntly stated, approximately half the population will face starvation in just 1 week due to an inability to purchase food. That's when nearly every major U.S. city begins to burn. President Trump will have no choice but to declare martial law and roll out troops on the streets. The starving masses, mostly leftists who failed to prepare, will loot, steal, rob, and murder anyone in sight if it gives them something to eat. It is during this time that you will thank yourself for having some storable food on hand, like, and well, they have a link here for their certified or organic survival food buckets. And it goes on, says, you'll be thrilled that you picked that up. Extra Glock or POF USA rifle. You'll wish you had spent twice as much money on ammo, gold and silver, instead of Starbucks, porn, and lotto tickets you blew it on. Don't forget about the mindless zombies who demand your stuff, citing equality. As you ponder all this, don't forget about the mindless liberal zombies who will wander out of the cities in a desperate effort to loot the suburbs and countryside for food and medicine. I know it's insulting to call them zombies, but it's actually not a bad description for your humanoid organism of low intelligence that's incapable of planning. Those are the ones who will be the greatest threat to you and your safety. The total lack of preparedness turns into your emergency when they show up at your door demanding you share your stuff. The communist-leaning philosophy of the political left is also extremely dangerous during times of social chaos because they've been taught that inequality is an evil thing. They truly believe that your stuff belongs in their hands, so everybody's equal, of course. They didn't spend equal time or money to prepare, did they? So what they're really doing is justifying their theft by calling it equality, and that is communism in a nutshell, come to think of it. If you live in a rural area, you might want to double check the range in yards to your front gate and match it to your DOP-E chart. If you don't know why that's important, you might not be qualified to live in the country during a zombie apocalypse. Make sure you have a PBS-14 at the ready, since the zombies come out at night, as Michael Jackson showed us in Thriller. I'm also a proponent of micro-catching, meaning hiding your stuff in small containers that are distributed in different places around your home or yard. Don't have all your stash in one place. It's not a bad idea to have a spare handgun, ammo, and some gold or silver coins buried in an airtight or watertight container that you can recover when needed. The MTM SAC Survivor ammo can is a good choice. You can pick them up for around $20. And it says that they have those at survivalcash.com. They have a link there that you can click on in that article. And it says where to find more information on surviving the coming financial collapse and zombie wave. It says I've just launched a new website that hasn't been announced yet. It's called censored.news. There we bring you all the top headlines in near real time from the largest and most censored alternative news sites on the net. Monitor that site for breaking news from all your favorite news sources. I'm also the creator of goodgopher.com, the independent media search engine that allows you to find information that's banned by Google, Facebook, and Twitter. Search goodgopher.com for anything, including details on survival, caching, gun selection, precious metals, and more. Of course, also keep checking Natural News and News Target for more news on preparedness and survival. Throughout 2017, I'll be focusing on bringing you a lot of hands-on how-to content for self-reliance and survival. So there you have all the news in this episode, and I'll have some more for you in a little while. So if you like what we're doing, give it a thumbs up, share it so people get the news. And if you haven't subscribed, do that. Click the little bell beside the subscribe button so you get the announcements in your email when I do shows. See you later.